Buddy. I'm in a band called Buddy, which had nothing to do with the fact that it's my name. It just was, you know, coincidental. And I play guitar and I sing.
How many records have you released?
2 full-length records and 2 EPs.
You've done some solo work and you've done some work with a band. Can you tell us the pros and cons of those?
Yeah, it's sort of, well, when I started I was solo, so I just went and kind of played shows on my own. But it was funny actually, I made some friends who, you know, played music too, that I would just hang out with. But I broke my arm, and I had a couple of shows coming up and I couldn't play the guitar, so those friends of mine just offered to like fill in and pitch in and be the band so I could just sing and get through the shows. But it was really fun, and I loved playing with them, so it just stuck, and then we became kind of a band from that. But I still do solo shows and stuff, especially like tours where it's just too expensive to like take everybody. I prefer playing with the other guys, but so it's pretty, you know, it's not really a solo thing anymore. You know, it's just out of necessity, I guess.
Can you introduce your band members and let us know what instruments they play?
Will Golden he actually has produced everything we've done, and we also co-write together all the time. So we write the songs together, and he also plays bass in the band and sometimes guitar. And let's see, and then Percy plays lead guitar, and Phil Cronengold plays keyboards and synths and stuff. And then Al Scrow plays the drums, and Michael Jerome plays the drums sometimes too.
What is your favorite recording you have done so far?
So far, I know it sounds probably like a typical answer, but the most recent thing we did, which came out in August, called Last Call for the Quiet Life, is my favorite so far. It's just I think it was the first one I really collaborated with someone, with Will, and we wrote everything together, and it kind of took me out of my comfort zone, and I kind of liked, it was rewarding kind of just not to, you know, get out of my usual habits and the way I write and stuff. Kind of took me to a different place, which was fun.
Do you guys do all of your own recordings, or do you rent a studio with an engineer?
Will, again, he has a studio, and so he and Al actually have a studio together, so we work there all the time. And then there's another studio in town we go and do, we track certain things there, but for the most part we do it all at Will's studio.
Are you releasing all of your music independently?
Yes, it's all independent. Yeah.
Have you ever been signed by a record label?
No, I never have.
Have you ever been approached by a record label?
Yes.
What was that like?
I mean, it was, you know, it was, I guess it's cool to have somebody interested, but it was pretty small labels that weren't able to really do much that we couldn't do on our own. So it just didn't really seem to make much sense.
What advice would you give to an indie band that was approached by an independent record label?
Just kind of outweigh what you think they'd be able to do for you that you can't do yourself. And if you can go, you know, it just depends on the label and the deal. Some of them are great. You know, if somebody's, you know, a label can still kind of act as a bank, and if you don't have any money, they can help you do things that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. But a lot of deals are more like, you know, for very little money and a lot of ownership in return, and it's not really, it can not be worth it. if you so you just have to kind of weigh the risk of what you're giving away and what you're getting back, I guess.
How much time do you spend on your band other than practicing, songwriting, and recording?
Well, I guess I spend a lot of time on the band. Although that does take up most of the time, is doing that stuff. I guess it's just like, I spend a lot of time on the band by just trying to be active with it. Like to try not to get too like, wait around for something to happen. So, but those first three you mentioned are probably do take up the majority of the time.
How beneficial is touring for your band?
Really beneficial. It's great. It's, you know, it helps a lot to like, not only to kind of go out and find people, like to go, just kind of bring it to people, but also, you know, it helps that, I think it helps the band and, or like even me if I'm doing solo tours, just to like keep momentum going, like by, you know, just doing things and be, you know, like by getting out there and keeping like, just keeping energy going, keeping it interesting and stuff. I find really helpful with touring as opposed to like just kind of sitting at home and only writing, and then it's just, yeah, I think it can kind of slow stuff down, I guess.
So your music has been on TV shows.
This is real.
Tell us about what your experience was like with the licensing, how you did it, like, you know, what that experience was like, any of the kind of teachings you can give from that.
Yeah, it was really neat. You know, we really just got, speaking of lucky, like we just got really fortunate. There were people that were supportive of what we were doing that put us on different TV shows, and it really helped, you know, get the music out there and make a little money and stuff. So we my manager Graham too, like just, you know, worked hard to just kind of get people to listen to it, and it really you know, paid off. It was a really helpful thing.
So we hear you have a
That's
manager.
not true. No, I do have a manager. His name's Graham, and actually that was another kind of, you know, fortunate thing, as I was playing, I think one of the, like the third show I ever played, and I was playing with my friend Mike was playing keyboards with me, and we played at a place in LA called Tangier, and it was the worst show of my life. I think it was awful. There was a problem with the tuning on the keyboard, and we couldn't figure out we didn't know that till later, we couldn't figure out why the guitar and the keyboard were not in tune with each other. And so the entire show pretty much was us trying to figure it out on stage. Like, it was the worst, you know, not even playing any songs. And then I finally just played a couple songs of my own at the end. But he happened to be in the, watching that shit show and came up after me and talked about it, and then I think came to another one, and you know, said he wanted to kind of manage us. So it was, and it just really worked out. It was a fortuitous thing. It was great.
We see you have done some covers.
Mm-hmm.
How has that been helpful, and in what ways?
It's been helpful. Mostly it's, you know, the covers were just mostly kind of happened out of just wanting to have fun. Like, and do something kind of that isn't in our comfort zone or wheelhouse, just to kind of like mess around. And then, but having done them and released them, it just, you find those songs kind of go in get out of your usual, your sort of world. You know, they get into different blogs and different listeners will hear you for the first time because of the version you happen to be doing of the song they already know. So it's fun. It's pretty interesting how that can almost, that has helped get some maybe different kinds of people to listen.
What is the worst thing about being in a band?
I think just the worst thing about it is really the inconsistency of it, like the ups and downs of it, and it's hard to just like financially and stuff. It's really, things can seem like they're going pretty well, but it's not like a steady paycheck, so you just don't know if it's just going to be super dry for a long time, and it's like, so you have to kind of try to squirrel away everything that you get, because it could be, you might not get paid for anything for months, and then you make a little bit of money and hope it keeps going, but you don't know. It's like a really, it's an unreliable income. It's an inconsistent, I should say, income, but it's, so that's probably like the hardest thing. And yeah, and just I guess it's like scheduling and stuff too. I feel like you're always on hold because you never know what's going to come up. So it's hard to even say, yeah, I'll definitely go to your wedding or whatever. And then something comes up and you feel like a jerk because you feel like you need to go work. But when the opportunities come up, you just have to do it, I guess, because you never know where they're going to come from.
Do you have any advice for a band that's kind of struggling right now that wants to springboard to that next level? Like, what would you tell them?
I would say just say yes to everything. Like, that's something I learned early too, especially when you're starting. Like, any show or any tour or whatever, if you can pull it off, like financially, just be able to, even if you have to lose a little bit of money to go on tour or whatever it is, but just, keep working, I guess. Say yes to everything and try to build something that way. And to also get really lucky, I guess, would be helpful.
Have you ever hired a publicist?
I have. We hired one for the most recent record we did, and that was the first time and only time, I guess. Actually, I take that back. So that was the first time I did it for like a record release. I went over to like the UK on a tour once, and we hired a publicist for the tour. So I did a lot of like radio kind of shows and stuff like that, which was really helpful for. It was like only the second or third time I'd been there, so it was like helpful to kind of do stuff I wouldn't be able to get on my own. So yeah, it's great.
What social media sites does your band use?
We use Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Friendster. Yeah, I guess those are the major ones. I guess you wouldn't call Bandcamp a social media. Yeah.
Of those social media sites, what is the most helpful for your band to connect with new fans and communicate with current ones?
I think it's Twitter, like for us, just because it's so immediate. The response of Twitter is so immediate, and people, retweeting or whatever, you can get the word out the fastest. It's really helpful, I find, on tour, like because I can be really bad about it and tweet something about the show like that night and I feel like I've gotten a pretty decent word out about it, which is, I think, pretty powerful media outlet.
I'm happy for your ring, sorry for everything I never said. I won't ask for much,
How do you market your band other than social media?
I just go to the gym. Just tell people